Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Weekly Walk. It is Monday, May 10th, year of our Lord 2021. And this will be episode number 38. And as always, I'm your host, Joshua Ingram. And kind of just going to be spitballing it here today. I didn't write down any of my weekly thoughts. So, but before getting into it, I just want to pray. So that's kind of, something we don't usually do, but I'm just going to pray here for guidance. Well, Lord, I have one idea of something that I want to talk about, but I pray that you would bless it, that you would guide my tongue, that you would guide my conversation here, that you would lead me into all truth, that you would protect the ears of those who are listening, that anything that's false or anything that I'm wrong about or is in error, that it would just go in one ear and out the other, and they'd forget about it. Anything that's true, anything that's good, anything that's wholesome, anything that's righteous, anything that's of you, Lord, just let it stick in our hearts. Let us remember it and think about it and meditate upon it and grow by it and just be edified. And anything else that you want me to talk about, Lord, just lead me into that, because I'm not really sure what to talk about here tonight. Thank you, Lord, for everything you've given me. Thank you for your wisdom and your knowledge and your grace and your mercy and your love and your kindness and your compassion and your long suffering. Just how you endure with us, Lord. You bear with us in our sins and offer forgiveness and love and mercy and kindness and gentleness and goodness. And you're ever leading, ever guiding, always shepherding us, Lord, and I appreciate that. I love you, Lord. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen. All right, so, yeah, I didn't really have anything to talk about this week because it was just kind of one of those blasé type weeks. Everything was just kind of the same, just going through the motions of life. It just seems like life recently has just been getting up, going to the gym, doing work, getting done, eating supper, going to bed, and it's kind of just that same routine over and over. And so I just really haven't been thinking. I suppose a lot of it maybe is I haven't been listening to really spiritual things during the work week. I've been kind of just turning the TV on in the background instead of listening to sermons and edifying podcasts like I normally would. So I think that's it. That's probably the key. That's why my thoughts haven't been geared towards spiritual things. And then, not to mention, I've been reading a secular book during my lunch break rather than a spiritual book. I try to, I have a desire to read all the old classics, Moby Dick and Charles Dickens and things like that. And so what I'll do is I've got this pattern. I'll read two good, solid biblical either books on doctrine or theology or something like that, or maybe even like a biography or something in the Lord. Two good spiritual books, and then I'll read some false teaching to get understanding, so that I can. If I'm going to call out a heretic, that I'll have specifics on what to call them out on. And then I'll read two more good spiritual books, and then I'll read a secular book. So I got a 5-book pattern there that I just kind of rotate through. And then recently I went through all my books to find out if I have anything in abundance, and found that I have an abundance of Pastor John Piper and an abundance on the creation evolution debate. And so I've worked those into the rotation too. I want to read a couple Piper books every year and a couple of those creation books every year. And then also I have several big collections. Like I've got the works of John Newton, the works of John Knox. Both of those were given to me as gifts by my brothers. Great books, but big and meaty, and they take a while to get through. And then I've got the collected works of Charles Spurgeon's sermons, and his commentary on Psalms. So I also try to get through one of those a year, and usually I look at like March or April to start it. And so I'm currently on a secular book, or I just finished it actually today, as a matter of fact. I was reading The Adventures of Huck Finn. Really, really fun book. But because, like I say, a lot of my meditation, a lot of my good spiritual thoughts are done during my lunch break while I'm reading, some spiritual book. And I guess so I haven't been doing that. I've been thinking more about the adventures of Huck Finn during my lunch break. And then when I'm working, I'm not listening to those sermons or podcasts. I'm instead got the TV on in the background. So I suppose that's had a negative effect on my thought life. And then just kind of, so I suppose that's why I don't have a whole lot to talk about, because my mind's just kind of been not necessarily blank, but just going through the motions, I guess you would say. But one thing that I was thinking about, something that I often think about, something that a lot of my heart is geared towards, is I've been thinking about the world system, the New World Order system. And the reason I was thinking about it is I've mentioned before, I do a lot of different video series or ministry type things. In addition to this podcast, I also do a live video on Facebook on a semi-daily basis that I call A Few Quick Minutes in the Word, where I'm just working through my favorite scriptures, my favorite books, verse by verse, and just sharing thoughts on it. And then I also do a reaction channel on YouTube, or a reaction video series on YouTube, where I just react to different Christian things, whether it's false teaching or good biblical preaching or evangelism or Christian music or whatever. That one's just something to do for fun. And then I also do teaching on several different doctrines and things that have been important to me, just things that I've written on through the years. I do a video on those. And then the most recent one, besides this podcast, is the one I'm doing on developing a proper worldview. And that one to me is the funnest. And so I was thinking this week, I was like, man, if when I die, if I can be known for one thing, if I can have one thing that's really my life work, so to speak, I would want that video series to be it. Because I truly enjoy looking into it, and I feel like the Lord is just, from the moment I got saved, has just drawn me in that direction, gave me tremendous hunger and zeal to learn as much as I can about that topic. And a lot of that learning has come through various documentaries. And so I'm basically, in this video series I'm doing, I just do a watch along to these various documentaries. And I'm trying to do them in a logical sequence, just kind of to build that's why I call it developing a proper worldview. It's just building step upon step. And so I was thinking about that and thinking about how much I enjoy doing those. And so I just wanted to share here tonight some of my thoughts on what I mean by New World Order. That might be a concept that not everybody's familiar with. It might be a term that some people have heard as just conspiracy theory, and so they just dismiss it outright, or whatever the case may be. But really, the whole idea is based on the biblical concept that the Bible prophesies in Revelation 13 that there will be a one world government. It says that there will be a beast, which in the book of Daniel, when Daniel had visions of beasts, it was revealed to him by God that those beasts represented kingdoms. And so when John has a vision of a beast, it's safe for us to assume that that's also referring to a kingdom. And this particular kingdom in Revelation 13, it says that all tribes, tongues, and nations will worship it. So it's a worldwide kingdom, a kingdom that encompasses all tribes, all tongues, all nations. And not only will they worship it, but it also says that this kingdom, this beast system, will require everybody, rich and poor, small and great, to take a mark in their right hand or in their forehead, and that they won't be able to buy or sell without this mark. And so I look at that and I see like technologies that exist today, like implantable microchips and RFID technology, and that certainly seems to fit the mold of what's being talked about there in the book of Revelation. So we have this worldwide beast system, this world kingdom that will require allegiance from everybody and will require some sort of mark, and that if you don't take the mark, you won't be able to participate in the economic system, the buying and selling. You'll be cut off from society. You'll be cut off from banking. You won't be able to buy, sell, you won't be able to rent, you won't be able to own. And that's how this system will take control over everything. So we have that prophecy in the book of Revelation. We also have in Psalms, in Psalm 2, it says that the kings of the earth and the rulers of this earth band together in unity to rebel against God and his Christ, to rebel against God and Jesus Christ. And they want to get rid of his rule. They want to cast off his chains of control and be done with him. They want to do their own thing. So Psalm 2 says that. It says the rulers and kings of the earth plot together against God. And then you look at the devil's temptation of Jesus in the desert, like in Luke chapter 4 is one place where you can read it. I think Matthew chapter 4 is another. But it says that the devil comes to Jesus, shows him all the kingdoms of the earth, and says, these kingdoms belong to me. I give them to whomever I want. If you'll bow down and worship me, I'll give them to you. And of course, Jesus resisted. But that verse there shows that the kingdoms of this world belong to the devil. To add emphasis to that, Jesus called the devil the prince of this world, the prince of the power of the air, the god of this world, the spirit that works in the children of disobedience, the spirit that's at work in those who don't belong to God. So the devil controls this world. So when you take all these concepts together, when you take all these biblical concepts together, we start to develop a picture, and we see that the devil rules this world, all of its kingdoms, and I don't believe that's just referring to actual countries, but every slot of influence, every section of control. So that would include corporations and academia and media. Those are different kingdoms. You have the kingdom of ABC, the kingdom of CNN, the kingdom of Hollywood, the kingdom of Columbia Records, the kingdom of McDonald's, the kingdom of Ford. These different empires that are built in addition to the nations of the world. And all these kingdoms belong to the devil. He is the one in control of this world. He's the one that is at work in the hearts and minds of those who aren't Christ's. So we have that as a background here. And then we see that the kings and rulers are opposed to Jesus Christ. They don't want anything to do with him. They want to get rid of him. And then we see that it's prophesied that there will be a world empire, a worldwide kingdom that is an antichrist kingdom that requires allegiance and will cut you off from society if you don't pledge allegiance through a physical mark. So when all those concepts are taken together, you have a biblical basis to start then looking at the world. You have a biblical foundation from which you can stand upon and then examine what we see in society. And so when you do that, one of the first things, if you start to investigate this, one of the first things you'll see is that our world leaders, the kings of this earth, are often calling for a new world order, is what they call it. On the back of the American $1 bill is a pyramid, and underneath, and the pyramid is an occult symbol. It's a Luciferian symbol, a satanic symbol that represents Lucifer's kingdom. And on the top of that pyramid is an all-seeing eye of Horus, and Horus is another name for Lucifer, Satan. And below that pyramid, you have 3 words in Latin. It says Novus Ordo Seclorum. And that Latin phrase means new order of the ages, or new order of the world. And so that's where these politicians and rulers get that phrase, new world order. Their purpose, their functionality is to create the kings. And so remember, with Psalm 2 in mind, and Revelation 13 and Luke 4 and the other scriptures, with all that in mind, we see the kings and the rulers calling for a world empire, calling for the establishment of a global empire. And we know that this is an antichrist empire. We can see the direction it's moving. When you look at the immoral agenda of governments, how authoritarian powers always kill, always oppress, how they sell, like in America right now, they celebrate debauchery like homosexuality and transgenderism and abortion. It's an evil organization, an antichrist organization. And when you look at the kingdoms of the world in Hollywood, with all the pedophilia accusations and the immoral, debauched movies that come out, full of cussing and swearing and sex and nudity. And you listen to the music, the kingdom, the empire of music, whether it's country, rap, rock, whatever it is. It's debauched music, full of alcoholism and again, cussing and swearing and sexual stuff. Just wicked on the highest levels. And we see we see musicians actively performing witchcraft rituals during their concerts and celebrating the devil on their album covers. And when you look at big corporations who have the love of money and make products that are damaging to health, you look at like McDonald's with the processed garbage food that they feed people, that just causes obesity and heart problems and liver problems and all sorts of other things. And even automobile organizations making unsafe cars. Think about this. NASCAR can make a vehicle that can go 220 miles an hour and crash into a wall, and the guy can walk away without a scratch. But the cars that are sold to us, if you get into an accident at 60 miles per hour, there's a high probability that you're going to die. I think car accidents are the number 1 cause of death in America. I'm not sure about that, but I think that's the case. If not the number 1, they're near the top. But they could easily produce cars that would, along the NASCAR level, with the 5-point harnesses, with roll bars that would protect people. They could make cars safer, but it wouldn't be cost effective. And so to save money, they make less safe cars. So there's just all that, the money is often, because the scriptures say money is the root of all evil, or the love of money is the root of all evil. And so you can often trace back these corporations, and you can see that it's all just money generated. And any industry you go to work for, for the most part, you'll find that employers could care less about their employees. They want to get as much labor out of them for as little pay as possible. And so the whole system is a corrupt system. The whole world is a corrupt world. And we can see that all of it is moving towards a new world order. You have, like in the 1940s, after World War II, they come out and said, well, we need world government. We need the United Nations. And so the nations signed up for that. You have trade agreements between countries that open up the borders for corporations to do business in other countries, which is setting an economic global empire where it's just a collage of corporations with no national boundary. So it's setting the stage for a new world order. And so when you discover that, when you hear it from the politician's mouth, it's not conspiracy. Like if you just Google, go to YouTube and just look up New World Order speeches, or do a little bit of deep dive research, and you'll find that numerous world leaders and politicians are calling for this world empire, this new world order. And again, Psalms 2 tells us the kings and rulers are actively opposed to God, and the kingdoms belong to Satan, and he gives them to whom he will. And so so then you see, okay, these people that are in power, these people calling for the new world order, are often also involved in the occult. You find that they're involved in high-level Freemasonry, or they're involved in Skull and Bones, or they're involved in Bohemian Grove, the Bohemian Club. And when you look into these organizations, like for instance, the Bohemian Club, politicians and world rulers, the kings and rulers of the world, gather together in Northern California for a 2-week sabbatical of sorts, where they say, quotations, that they're just out there having fun. It's just a fraternity for guys to get together and have fun. But when you go in there, and it's not open to the public, but people have snuck in there and gotten video footage. There's a 40-foot stone owl by the lakeside that they worship. It's called Moloch. Anybody familiar with the Bible will know that Moloch is a demon god from the Old Testament times. And they perform a mock cremation there, where they burn a body. And on the video footage, you can't really see you can just kind of see the outline of them putting the body into the fire. They say it's an effigy, it's just a mannequin, and hopefully that is the case. But they perform this ceremony where they dress like druids. And think about this. This is world leaders. These are politicians. These are from Ronald Reagan, Richard Nixon, the Bush family, Henry Kissinger, Brzezinski, just all these famous world leaders and famous people. They gather together and they dress like druids, and they burn a mannequin body in a fake offering. They burn this offering to Moloch, while this speech plays over a loud system called the cremation of care, which again is what Psalm 2 talks about, how they want to cast off the reins of God. The reign of God in our hearts, even in lost people, is the conscience, your care. Everybody feels bad when they do something evil unless their conscience is seared. And so here they're doing a ceremony where they do this wicked deed in order to sear their consciences. It's the cremation of care. They want to cast off care, cast off conscience, so that they can do evil deeds without feeling bad about it, so that they can do wickedness without feeling bad about it, so that they can do things like Epstein Island, where they rape and molest and murder children. Things like that, or when the Hollywood pedophilias, where there's an adrenaline thing, adrenochrome. There's when a person is scared, adrenaline is released into the blood, and so what they'll do is they'll scare these children to death. They'll terrify them right before they kill them, and then drink their blood, which is where we get like the myths of the vampires and stuff like that. But they're drinking the adrenochrome, the adrenaline from the blood. It's a drug. It gets them high. If you go do some research, you'll find that back when Al Gore was running for president, it was a bit of a controversy that he traveled with blood. People were like, why does he travel with blood? But Hollywood is highly involved in this. But the idea here is that you have all these people that are involved in wicked witchcraft and occultism, in mystery religions, which is all just different denominations, so to speak, different variations of Luciferianism, of Satan worship. And so they enter these clubs, they enter these groups, they enter these religions, these organizations, and the ones that are willing to do whatever, the ones that are willing to cremate their care and do wickedness, advance in these cults and work their way up the ladder until the point where they reach, where they're told that it's Lucifer that they worship, that Lucifer is God. And in the same way in Luke 4, where the devil came to Jesus and said, I will give you the kingdoms if you'll worship me, that same offer goes out to these high-level occultists, these high-level evil occultists. That same offer goes, hey, you can have the kingdom, this sliver of the kingdom if you'll worship me. And so they sell their souls for money and power and control. And that's why these people are put into position. And it's why once they're in these positions of power, they start working this prophetic agenda. They start working towards this evil Antichrist New World Order. They're getting their instructions through their occult witchcraft. They're getting their instructions from the principalities and powers. The Bible says we don't wrestle against flesh and blood. We wrestle against principalities and powers and spiritual forces in dark places. These spiritual forces, these high powers, these spirits, these demons, communicate with these high-level occultists through their various forms of witchcraft and instruct them. Tell them, you can have the kingdoms, you can have all the power, you can have eternal life, like the devil's first lie in the garden, if you'll do these things. And that agenda includes moving everything towards this world system. And so, this developing a proper worldview series I'm doing, I'm working. See, if you're just listening to this podcast and you're unfamiliar with all these things, this probably sounds like sheer lunacy to you. You obviously, if you're an intelligent person, you recognize slivers of truth. You know about the dollar bill. You know about that pyramid on the back. You've heard politicians call for a new world order. Perhaps you've heard of the Bohemian Club or Freemasonry, but you've never looked into it, and these things seem too extreme and too unbelievable to believe. But if you did some research, you'll find that everything I'm saying is true, verifiably true. You can look into these things and find these things out. So the series I'm doing, instead of just dumping all this information on a person and having them go, you're completely insane, this is lunacy, you're a tinfoil hat wearing lunatic, you probably believe in Bigfoots and UFOs and flat earth. So instead of doing that, I'm trying to show them in a step-by-step pattern how I've come to reach these conclusions, starting with the biblical foundation, starting with those biblical principles, and then saying, so once we have that and we know that the Bible says this, then we can look at the world and we can see, well, why are these politicians calling for a new world order? Who are these people? What do they believe? And then you start looking at that and you go, man, they're involved in some dark things. Why would our world leaders go worship a stone owl called Moloch and pretend to sacrifice a body to it and call it the cremation of care? Why would they participate in things like that? Why would they go into Freemasonry and take these blood oaths? And the presidents that we've had that have been Freemasons have been 32nd degree or higher Masons, in which case they're given the Masonry handbook, Morals and Dogma, that specifically identifies Lucifer as God. Why would they participate in this? Why are the kings and rulers of the earth participating in this? And of course we know why, because we have that biblical understanding. So then we start seeing it coming from their own mouths, and you start to see the occult foundation behind it, and then you start to see some of the things they do. And that's what we'll get into here after the break. So just stick with me. Hey, welcome back from the break. You're listening to The Weekly Walk. I'm your host, Joshua Ingram. We've been talking about the New World Order. So what are some of the things that these people do? We see they're calling for this world system that the Bible prophesies. We see they're involved in the occultism. One of the keys to understand this, and of course I can't get into everything, but I would highly recommend that you go to my YouTube channel, King Ram 417. It's K, my middle initial, Ingram, my last name, 417, and start watching Developing a Proper Worldview, the series I'm doing. I've got a long ways to go. Lord willing, it's like a 5-10 year project, probably like a 5-year project to get through everything, and only about a year into it. So, but one of the things that if I could get you to recognize here is they have a saying in Freemasonry and in occultism in general: order out of chaos. Order ab chao is the phrase. I don't know what language that is. I would assume Latin. But it means order out of chaos. And it's also referred to as the Hegelian dialect. It's a philosophy by a philosopher named Hegel, which is thesis, synthesis, or thesis, antithesis, synthesis. Or you have a problem. And well, here, I'll explain it this way: the order out of chaos. So they have an agenda that they want to accomplish. They want this world system. They want this world governing system. That's the agenda. The problem they face is that we have national sovereignty. We have many nations that are individually sovereignistic. They don't want world government. They want to keep their own national identity, especially in free nations like America. So that's the problem they encounter. They want to get everybody on board with this world system. So how do they overcome this problem? That brings in the solution. Their solution is, after studying psychology and propaganda and all things, they have learned that if people are afraid, if people are fearful, they're much more susceptible to suggestion. They're much more willing to follow a leader, to go where they're directed. And so they create chaos in the world and then offer their solution of world government as the solution to the chaos that they've created. So once you understand this philosophy, this psychology behind why or how they're achieving their agenda, part of how, it's not the only way. Propaganda, media control is another way. Academia controlling the schools is another way. Banking system controlling the money is another way. But through this order out of chaos, a big example would be like prior to World War II, they had failed to get their world government with the League of Nations after World War I. So they wanted to get the people to accept the world government. After especially America rejected the League of Nations, they realized they needed something even scarier than World War I. And so Adolf Hitler was raised up to power. And if you look into who funded Adolf Hitler, it's the same banking systems that funded our side of the war, the Allied side. The same banking families, which are high-level occultists, the kings and rulers of the world, that are under the control of Satan, under the control of occultism. They put Adolf Hitler into position, raised him to power, and brought about World War II. As a matter of fact, like 7 days before the Japanese bombed Pearl Harbor, Roosevelt was made aware of it. But he wanted a pretext for war. He knew the American people didn't want to get involved in another war, in another European war. So he needed something to push them in that direction. And he knew that if he allowed the Japanese to attack Hawaii, if he allowed the Japanese to attack Pearl Harbor, the American people would be angry and fearful and would get behind the war effort. So that was allowed, and World War II took place, and it was chaotic, and like 50 million people died, and people just wanted a solution. And so what was the solution that was offered? The United Nations. Let's raise up this world body. Fast forward to today, you've got things like Al Gore talking about how we need a global government to counteract global warming. That's the whole reason that they've pushed this global warming agenda. They know people will be afraid we're killing the planet. We're all going to die. So the only way to control this is a global government. We need a global government to control the carbon outputs of various countries. It's a world problem. We need a world solution. The same thing with terrorism. That's why when you look into the acts of terrorism, it's often the governments that are behind it, that have funded it, that have directed it, that have allowed it in order to advance a world government agenda, in order to establish military bases all over the world, in order to gather everything under one umbrella. So you have this continual order out of chaos agenda being played out. And so, like I say, anytime there's some sort of a big event, and on a smaller scale, like look at with the gun control. Every time there's a shooting, what do the politicians do? They immediately get on TV and start calling for gun control. And I'm not saying that the government is actively behind every shooting, but what they've done is they've created a society through the media, and through psychotropic drugs and things like that. They've created a condition. They've created a scenario where it is likely that there will be shootings. And then they just kind of sit back and wait for one to happen. And when it does, they immediately go, see, we need gun control. Because they know part of their agenda, an authoritarian system, which is what this Antichrist system will be, cannot have an armed citizenry. An armed citizenry can easily revolt against the system. There's more people, there's more masses than there are elites. There's more people being controlled than there are controllers. And so if the people have weapons, they can fight back against their controllers. So they know they need to get rid of the guns. But in America, there's a unique problem. We have a constitutional right to bear arms. And a lot of people take that seriously. A lot of people enjoy weapons. And so their agenda is we need to get the weapons out of people's hands. People don't want to do that. They think they have the right to have them. How do we accomplish this goal? Well, we use scare tactics. We put fear into people. And then we tell them the guns are the problem. We need to get rid of the guns. Give us the guns and everything will be okay. So again, it's the order out of chaos. And that's one of the ways they're advancing this New World Order system. The other way is through media manipulation. I think as far back as like the late 1800s, the railroad and steel and oil tycoons, or maybe I'm jumping ahead. It might not have been the steel and oil. It might have just been the railroad tycoons. They knew, or maybe it was the oil. I'm not sure. You'd have to do your own research and correct me. It was one of the three or all three or whatever it is. What you'll find is that at the top of all these corporations, it's the same people. There's a very, very, very small elite that truly run the kingdoms. That's why the devil's symbol on the back is a pyramid. It starts at the top with him. Below it is a small section, which would be the principalities and powers. Below that is a little bit bigger section, but still small. That would be the controlling elite, which some resources say it's 13 family bloodlines. The Rothschilds, the Rockefellers, the DuPonts, the Kennedys, the Onassises, the Reynolds family, the Lee family in China, the royal family, Merovingians or whatever they're called. So this small section of bloodlines, these 13 bloodlines, would be the next level down on the pyramid. Below that, you would have, when you study this out, they have councils and they have committees and things like that, ruling, boards, governing boards. And so there's a council of 33. I think, and then below that there's a council of 300, and then below that you would have national organizations like the Council on Foreign Relations in America, the Royal Institute in England, various things like that, Trilateral Commission, which is Japan, England, and America, I believe, the Bilderberg Group, which is CEOs and heads of state and things like that. And then below that, you would have the different occult organizations, or the different what I would call middle management people, like Kissinger, like Brzezinski, like the Clintons, like the Obamas, and people like that. And then below that, you would have, your senators, your judges, and things like that. And then the next level down, you would just have low-level occultism. And then below that, you have your masses. And so I forget where I was going with that. The media control. So these families in America, even as far back as the late 1800s, they knew that in order to hide what they were doing, in order to hide their agenda, they needed to control the media. And so they did some research, and they found out that there was like 18 major newspapers and that was it. If they bought up these 18 major newspapers, they could control the entire media landscape in America. Because usually you'll have hubs of media information. Like, let's say you got New York, you got Philadelphia, you got Boston, you got Chicago, you got Minneapolis, you got Denver, or whatever. And then, so you have major newspapers in there. And then all these other smaller towns and smaller cities are usually getting their news from those bigger newspapers. They're borrowing the information. And so back in the 1800s they did a study and found out that if they took over these 18 major newspapers, they could control the flow of information in America. Fast forward to the 1950s, there was a government operation called Operation Mockingbird, in which the CIA took over. Because remember, back in the 50s, you only had a few major broadcasting networks. You had NBC, CBS, ABC, I think, and that was pretty much it. And so the CIA, through this Operation Mockingbird, took over those broadcasting companies, took control of them, and controlled the flow of information once again, only allowing propaganda that benefited the military-industrial complex, which Eisenhower warned us about on his way out of office. If you go and watch his last speech before he left office, he warned against the military-industrial complex. John F. Kennedy also warned against secret societies. Many politicians have tried to warn us. Barry Goldwater put out a book, I think, in the 70s, trying to warn us. So there's, and again, if you research, there's lots and lots of research. But the media was taken control of in the 50s. And then you fast forward to even today, where we have so many different Sirius radio stations, Sirius FM or XM or whatever, and you have all the different broadcasting companies, and you have 250 satellite channels, and you have all the various magazines and all the various newspapers. But when you start to study it out, all of these companies, all of these broadcasting organizations, like 90% of them are controlled by 6 corporations. Viacom, Disney, whatever the other ones are, Universal, NBC, Rupert Murdoch, Time Warner, whatever it is. I forget which 6 it is. But 6 companies control 90% of the information. And so that's why we see right now with censorship pushes on the internet, because along came the internet, and all of a sudden people had access to information that wasn't available through mainstream media. You could just do a search engine search for a particular topic and find all sorts of alternative media sites where you could learn about things. And so in the same way that they've done in the past, in the 1800s when they took over the newspapers, in the 1950s when they took over the TVs, to today where the corporations control all the satellites and all the radio. But now they're taking control of the internet. They're through consolidation and monopolization. They're making, their controlled platforms the only option. Google and Facebook and Twitter and YouTube, so that you're getting all your information again from their controlled sources. And anything that's not under their control, they're censoring or blocking or shadow banning or making, virtually impossible to find. So, and through that media manipulation, through that propaganda, they control the flow of information. They only give information out to people that benefits their agenda, that benefits their plan. Constantly scaring people. Think about the last year, how COVID, which is really just a bad flu, no more dangerous than tuberculosis or a severe flu season. Somewhere in between that. I think tuberculosis in 2017 killed 1.7 million people. A bad flu season kills 60 to 80,000. So COVID's somewhere in between there. If you trust the numbers that are being reported. But again, we're getting that from their sources. So how can we trust any of that? But think about how they just scared people into submission to where all of a sudden, businesses are shutting down. People are losing their jobs and going on to government pay, getting their socialized checks and just advancing this agenda through media manipulation, just constantly scaring people. So not only do they control the flow of information, but as far back as Nazi Germany with Joseph Goebbels, I think his name was, the Nazis were studying how to do basically hypnotizing people through propaganda, using media and propaganda to control. And so when we won the war, America brought the Nazi scientists into America, and through like the CIA and stuff like that, started studying propaganda and how to manipulate and control. And one of the main things they do is not only with the fear, but also repetitive, a repeated message over and over and over again. Gets inside the head. It has a hypnotic effect. So like after 9/11, you would hear the word terrorism, terrorism, terrorism over and over and over and over on TV. Weapons of mass destruction, that phrase just repeated over and over and over. Nowadays you hear COVID-19, death rate, numbers skyrocketing, things like that, just repetitive messages over and over and over and over. Social distancing, that's the phrase, So anytime you hear the media repeating a phrase, anytime something catches on in the media, that's a sign that you're being brainwashed. That's a sign that this military-industrial controlled media is putting out a propaganda point. In addition to that, they control the pharmaceutical companies, and through various pharmaceuticals, they put people into an altered state of consciousness that allows hypnotization. I think in the 50s, they started putting fluoride in the water, and fluoride has a subtle hypnotizing effect. Where it puts people into a more subdued state of mind, making them more susceptible to the repetitive propaganda coming from the TV. In addition to that, television has a blue flicker rate, and that blue light flicker rate also has a hypnotizing effect. Anybody knows that. You set a toddler in front of a TV, what's the first thing that happens? They immediately zone out, tongue hanging out, staring right at the TV, barely hearing what you're saying to them. It's because the television is a hypnotic tool. So with these combinations, with the pharmaceuticals, with the hypnotizing, and then the fear tactics and the repetitive messages, they get people to buy into what they're selling. They get people to follow the leader, to follow the Pied Piper. In addition to various other topics, controlling Hollywood, controlling the music, it's a control system. The entire world is under its sway and is directing things towards this new world order, this beast system talked about in the book of Revelation. And so I guess that's where I'll leave off here. Like I say, I've been doing this series, developing a proper worldview, and I'm excited about it. I enjoy doing it, and this has kind of been an overview of what I'm going to get at in that series. And so again, I would highly recommend that you go to my YouTube channel, King Ram 417, K my middle initial, Ingram my last name, 417. If I ever get locked out of YouTube or shut down, because that is one of their controlled platforms, I'm also on Rumble. Rumble is just like YouTube, but a little bit freer, a little bit less censored, I think. And I'm on there under the same name, King Ram 417. So find me on one of those platforms, subscribe to me, watch the Developing a Proper Worldview videos that I'm doing. Watch them in order, because like I say, there's a logical procession. If you follow me on Facebook, send me a message. I can add you to our my Worldview documentary group, where I post these videos every time I do a new one. Or let me know you're interested, and I can just send them to you via Messenger or whatever. But I'm gonna wrap it up here. That's what I got for you guys tonight. As always, I truly appreciate you listening. I love you, and Lord willing, we'll talk to you next time.